Hello everyone, Pastor Howie here with another edition of Readings and Thoughts from the Scriptures. I've taken a short break from videos, so the last one was recorded on September 22nd, but we had some time away and now we're back. And so we return to the book of Acts, and we return to a new chapter in the book of Acts, Acts chapter 12. As we finished up Acts chapter 11, the stage was set. Peter had explained his actions to the people and disciples in Jerusalem regarding his sharing of the gospel with Cornelius and his household. And then we see a glimpse of how the gospel spread into another Gentile region, into Antioch. And in Antioch, how the disciples ended up being called Christians for the first time, most likely by the populace of Antioch, because people in Antioch recognized the difference that Christ was making in the lives of the disciples. And so they called them little Christs, little Messiahs. And so that was not necessarily a affirmative nickname, but at the same time, it became what we call ourselves today, Christians. As we come to Acts chapter 12, we come once again to an event in Peter's life, as Acts chapter 12 serves as a transition from Peter's leadership in Judea and the beginnings of the missionary movements into the rest of the world by Paul and Barnabas. But let's read this section today, Acts chapter 12, verses 1 through 19, and I'm going to stop halfway through verse 19 because that's how the section itself is divided up in the NIV. So here we go. Paul's miraculous escape from prison. It was about this time, and that is a reference to the idea of the gospel moving into Antioch, Peter explaining his testimony of the gospel of Jesus Christ to Cornelius, a Gentile centurion, and his household, which is not limited to his family, but to his household servants and probably to many, if not all, of his soldiers who were under him. And also the spread of the gospel in Antioch. And so it was about this time that King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. So the persecution led under Saul of Tarsus is over, because Saul of Tarsus is now preaching the gospel that he once persecuted. So now it's Herod's turn. King Herod, who was a Jewish king who was in consolidation with the Romans. He was appointed by the Romans to maintain the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, in the areas around Syria and Judea, Galilee, etc. So it's about this time King Herod arrested some who belonged to the church, intending to persecute them. He had James, the brother of John, put to death with the sword. First martyr in the book of Acts was Stephen, the deacon. The second martyr, and now the first of the apostles to be executed and become a martyr, is James, the brother of John. When he saw that when he saw that this met with approval among the Jews, who were increasingly anti-Christian at this point, he proceeded to seize Peter also. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread, that is, right after Passover. After arresting him, he put him in prison, handing him over to be guarded by 4 squads of 4 soldiers each. Herod intended to bring him out for public trial after the Passover. So Peter was kept in prison, but the church was earnestly praying to God for him. And that is separated out in the way that the NIV portrays these paragraphs, and it should be separated out in our minds. The church was earnestly praying to God for Peter. And the church should be earnestly praying to God today for those who are being persecuted for the faith around the world, no matter what their names are, no matter where they are. Persecution like this is still happening in 2023, and we need to be praying for those who are persecuted. The night before Herod was to bring him to trial, Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers, bound with 2 chains, and sentries stood guard at the entrance, so they pretty much secured his cell as best as possible. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord, who doesn't seem to be bound by the ways that prison bars are bound, this angel of the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the cell. He struck Peter on the side and woke him up. So Peter was either really, really depressed or really, really exhausted, so the angel had to just jar him awake. "Quick, get up," he said, and the chains fell off Peter's wrists. That's a miracle. That is a supernatural event, entering into the natural realm of Peter's cell and removing his bonds. Then the angel said to him, "Put on your clothes and sandals." Peter did so. "Wrap your cloak around you and follow me," the angel told him. Peter followed him out of the prison, but he had no idea that what the angel was doing was really happening. He thought he was seeing a vision, or he thought he was in a dream state, perhaps. They passed the 1st and 2nd guards and came to the iron gate leading to the city. It opened for them by itself. Again, supernatural realm entering into the physical realm and moving a gate that was guarded, moving a gate that was locked by no physical force. It opened for them by itself, and they went through it. When they had walked the length of one street, suddenly the angel left Peter. Then Peter came to himself and said, "Now I know without a doubt that the Lord has sent his angel and rescued me from Herod's clutches and from everything the Jewish people were hoping would happen." This is similar to, but certainly not the same as, what happened when the Jews turned against Jesus. They thought they could kill him and bind him in the grave, and that this whole thing that Jesus had started would go away. But Jesus broke the bonds of death and rose again. Now Peter is experiencing somewhat the same thing, in that the leader of the gospel in ministry in Jerusalem cannot be bound either. So yes, James has been killed by Herod. Peter's been miraculously saved from Herod's clutches, because the gospel must continue. And then we see a little bit of the Holy Spirit's sense of humor. When this had dawned on him, verse 12 tells us, he, Peter, went to the house of Mary, the mother of John, also called Mark, most likely the person who wrote the Gospel of Mark, where many people had gathered and were praying. Remember, the church was earnestly praying for Peter. They're getting their answer to prayer in Peter's miraculous, supernatural prison escape, if you will. Peter knocked at the outer entrance, and a servant named Rhoda came to answer the door. When she recognized Peter's voice, she was so overjoyed she ran back without opening it and exclaimed, "Peter is at the door." There's the sense of humor. You know, Peter, when he denied Christ before a servant, twice before a servant girl, a doorkeeper. Here, the doorkeeper is overjoyed to see Peter released from prison, but leaves him standing at the gate, still knocking on the door. I see the sense of humor the Holy Spirit has in relating this to us. It just kind of, you know, it would be something that would make an audience watching a sitcom laugh. Verse 15 tells us, "You're out of your mind," the people told her. When she kept insisting that it was so, they said, "It must be his angel." So they were praying for God to intervene and rescue Peter, and now that God has intervened and sent an angel to rescue Peter, they don't believe it could be true. But Peter kept on knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. I can only imagine how astonished, in a good way, and maybe an embarrassed way, but nonetheless astonished that God had literally, physically answered their prayer. Peter motioned with his hand for them to be quiet and described how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. "Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this," he said, and then he left them for another place. Now there were more than one James in the list of the apostles. There was James, the brother of John, and another James named the son of Alphaeus. So it's this James that is now going to kind of has stepped up to the plate of leading the apostles and the disciples in Jerusalem. "Tell James and the other brothers and sisters about this," he said, and then he left for another place. We don't know what that other place was. Later on, we'll see Peter again referred to, but at this point, the book of Acts moves from a focus on Peter to a focus on Paul and Barnabas and the spread of the gospel to the Gentiles. In the morning, there was no small commotion among the soldiers as to what had become of Peter. After Herod had a thorough search made for him and did not find him, he cross-examined the guards and ordered that they be executed. The penalty for failure for a Roman soldier was death. And even though Herod was a Jewish king who was a collaborator with the Romans, most likely these guards were Roman soldiers, and they were executed. And then we're told the rest of verse 19 is the beginning of Herod's death, which we'll look at more in detail in our next video. But the rest of verse 19 tells us, "Then Herod went from Judea to Caesarea and stayed there." And we'll hear more about Herod and his end in our next video. Don't be surprised if you're a person of earnest prayer when God answers prayer. He may do so in unexpected ways. He might seem like he's not even listening to your prayer. But don't forsake earnest prayer, especially for those who are being persecuted for their witness of Jesus. God can still do, and does still do, miraculous supernatural interventions, as he did in Peter's life. Don't be surprised, but always be astonished at how God works. And that's what I have for you today in this video. So until next time, be astonished at the works of God in your life.